Hi everyone, and welcome to I think it's my 12th or 11th or 12th stream on this series. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. If you would like to join, I will put up some details of how you can join the stream later on. But tonight, it's Friday night, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by, I'll probably butcher her name here, but Sucheta Gawade.
Hello, hi,
Sucheta, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hi, how are you getting on?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We had a slight delay when we were talking earlier, but thankfully I think it's cleared up. Good. So, Sucheta, what made you reach out and want to come on and chat to me? Because I don't think we've ever chatted, which is great. So it's really nice to speak to you and meet you for the very first time. So I'm delighted to have a conversation with you. So, what did you want to talk about tonight?
Yeah, so I'm likewise. I'm delighted to be on your live podcast today. And the reason I reached out basically was because I like to share my passion about Microsoft technology in general, the certifications that I've done. I really want to share my experiences about having studied for all of them and having sat for the exams. It's definitely a task. And people like you in the community, it's really great to learn from you guys, and I just wanted to give back as well. So I thought this was a good platform since you had a great initiative here, running these podcasts.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks for reaching out. I'm delighted that people are reaching out that I've never spoken to. So it's always great to come on and kind of ask you about your career and stuff. So how did you get started with? Give us a bit of background into your career and how you got started kind of doing the Azure exams as well. How did you get into tech?
So, currently I work in healthcare IT, but I've been in tech right from the beginning of my career. I would say I'm a proud woman in tech. We have that hashtag, women in tech. So I started off with diving into a very niche area of IT. Then was applications packaging, which is kind of the engineering of wrapping software applications into automated installers for like touchless deployment. And those legacy technologies then advanced into what we still have around called app within app. And while that was happening, I expanded my areas of work more into desktop engineering. So I really find great enjoyment and fulfillment in my field of work, which is a blend of modern endpoint management, enterprise mobility, systems administration, engineering of desktops, like I said. And I work, that gives me the opportunity to work majorly on Microsoft technology solutions, products and services. Of late, I've dived deeper into Azure, which is a great platform. I think I definitely like, exploring it further. As things advance, as things change, it's definitely fun.
Cool. The people are saying, Shueta, that there's a little bit of an echo. Do you have headphones at all? You could potentially. Do you have headphones you could wear? I'm not sure how we can clear that up. I think it's. I went on mute when you were talking there, and I think it's maybe your end. Do you have a headphone you could potentially would you wear?
Not right here, but let me see.
Yeah. Because we've got echo cancellation off. I know that. I'll double check that.
Okay, let me try that once again. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no, it's your time.
Okay, is that better?
Let's don't know. Try talking again just to see.
Is that good now?
Oh, that sounds better. I think. Yeah. Hopefully the people will let us know because I don't hear the echo. The people listening can hear the echo. I think it's okay now.
Okay.
Okay, cool. We'll keep going and see how we go on. Brilliant. Right. So your backgrounds and all of that. That's awesome. I think it's gone now. Hopefully, good. So, what was the very first exam you did? And what how did you get on with that? And how do you study for these exams? Give me a bit of background about how you go about studying.
Sure. So what I did first was the AZ900, which is Azure Fundamentals, and which I think is a great starting point for anyone stepping into the cloud, unless you've worked into the Azure cloud platform enough. But you can master the basics, get your foundations built strong. So that's where I started. And while I was doing that, I really wanted to get further. Obviously, the next one that I wanted to choose was the AZ104, which is Azure Administrator Associate. And the only reason for that is because of my work area, right? Because the Administrator Associate is more like implementing, managing, monitoring Azure, the Azure environment. So I did that one. And then I was thinking to myself, because I did that, I completed the prereqs for the solutions architect expert. So I was like, I should study further. And because I keep exploring various Microsoft platforms, as part of my job as well as part of my passion, I really wanted to get further. So I studied for the solutions architect expert and I gave that test, got that certified. While I was doing that, I also wanted to do most of the foundational level certifications on the side, whatever Azure has or Microsoft provides as part of the actual platform. So I started off with most of the fundamentals, the AI fundamentals, data fundamentals, Power Platform, because I think they really give you a good overview, and that gives you a nice high level understanding to then understand what you want to do further, right, as far as studying goes. And this is all out of the thirst to learn and to grow knowledge wise than to get certified. But because I'm gaining the knowledge, I'm like, why not just sit for the exam, because that's the only gap in between getting certified and having the knowledge. So those were my driving factors, basically. Coming back to the stream of certifications that I completed, I did go through most of the fundamentals, but I did not do the Dynamics, CRM, and ERP. And there's a fun story behind that. So I didn't really feel those were required as part of my work area. So I really didn't even think about those. But then I saw this tweet from Keith Atherton some time ago. Hey, Keith, if you're watching. He had mentioned in his tweet that he completed all of the fundamentals. And I was like, oh, that's nice, but I just didn't do the Dynamics ones. And he had a good insight. He was like, he was thinking probably on the same lines, but then he said it overlaps a lot with Power Platform. So he really found it very, very important. And I think that's really great. And it was a nice insight, and I would probably pursue it at some point. But those were the fundamentals that I did. Most of them except for those two. I didn't definitely stop there, and this is like a journey of 2 or 3 years. The next track that I really wanted to do is mostly security, because of late we cannot say enough how security is important. So in an effort to secure information technology systems, or reduce attacks, Microsoft has the Security Operations Analyst Associate exam. So I studied for that one. That gave me good insights into Defender, Sentinel. There's another one, which is the SC300, I think, which is Identity and Access Administrator. That one I think is more, I've been trying to remember because it's been a while I did all of this, but that one I think is more about implementing identities in Azure AD, or should I say Entra ID, because that's the new name. So that's the new
name. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so the Identity and Access Administrator Associate, I did that one. So those are mostly in the security area. And the last one that I did, or the last track that I want to focus on here, is more around the field that I work in. So given the desktop engineering or endpoint management area, there is M365 certified modern desktop administrator associate, which is the MD 100 and MD 101. They're actually changing that to MD 102, and it's called the Endpoint Administrator. So that's more for deploying and maintaining Windows, updating operating systems, managing policies. That's a very important exam from my perspective for my job role. So I studied for those. It's actually when I did those, it was 2 exams and 1 certificate, but I think they've made it simpler now. And then the other one I want to focus on is for our viewers here, want to focus on is the M365 certified enterprise administrator expert, which is more for M365 services, planning, migrating, deploying, designing, and implementing M365 in general. Even that one, I think, was kind of the same case where they had 2 exams, 1 certificate, but now it's changed to the MS 102. So those are kind of the 12 different certifications that I did. But yeah, it's been
Yeah, I love the fact that you've kind of started with the fundamentals and moved towards what suits you. Because you've done a lot of exams that I'll probably never do and never ever have any, not be very good at. Like M365 stuff is just not my thing at all. Talk me through how do you go about studying for these exams? Are you hands-on learning? Are you reading? Are you doing blog posts? What's your format for learning? So how did you start with AZ900 for people who are starting out at the very beginning? Talk me through a bit about how you study and
Sure. So that I think is the most important part, right, for success at the exam. It's really important to explore and understand the skills measured, the objectives of the exams, weightage on each section to be able to focus on the right areas when you study. Along with that, you need to have the right resources. And there are several resources that Microsoft has available as far as certification exams go. When I started with Microsoft Learn because that's the best documentation out there. It has always been since the past, right? We had MSDN, which now is called Microsoft Learn, but that's the to-go source. So Microsoft Learn obviously has self-paced learning paths. So you can choose for like studying for one certification or a certification path. And that gives you everything that you need to study. So I definitely leveraged that. Then there are practice assessments available from Microsoft for certain exams. It's not for all, but for certain exams for sure. I think I took advantage of those because that's only been, I think, made available of late. So that was the thing. But going back a step, when I was trying to figure out which certifications I want to do, I leaned more on the certification posters. So Microsoft has these certification posters and guidelines, which really gives you a good delineation of how the path looks like and which path better suits you, so you can pick and choose.
yeah. I quite like the fact that Microsoft decided to align the exams with job roles. I thought that was quite a good idea. Yeah.
Yes.
Training posters are very good because I'm getting asked at work when I've just done some AZ900 internal training, and the guys who set all the training up are like, "What do you want to do next?" And I'm like, "Well, let's look at the training poster and kind of follow the poster to see which ways we can branch out, and then see which." Yes, the training posters are really, really good. I still think they're relevant today. There is one question I don't really want to miss, but Patrick Monk's got a question for you. So if you want to answer this, how do you view security, especially with AI coming in, since it's learned based on our input? How do we ensure that we're teaching the mode right stuff without compromising on information security? Good question. I'll let you read that.
That is true. Yeah. I think, like I was saying earlier, we cannot stress enough about security these days. So with AI coming in, I feel, in my personal opinion, that things around how we deal with security currently should change. And I'm pretty sure the big organizations out there are working to, go ahead of what AI could do in a not so good fashion to kind of combat what AI could do not do well. from like a security standard.
Yeah.
From like a security standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel,
Yeah, I think,
and obviously Microsoft will come up with documentation and more certification for that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when I went to the MVP summit, somebody asked Mark Risnovich, "What's your like goal? What do you see happening in the future?" And he's like, "With AI, I really don't know." He's like, "I hope people don't use it for bad because people can
Right.
still." You always think about people using Copilot, but you can start to use Copilot for naughty stuff. You know, you can start asking it, "How do I write viruses and stuff like that?" So it's going to be an interesting time, I think, with AI and especially security. There's going to be not a greater need, but there's going to be a lot of focus on security and AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel with security and AI, you know, those will probably go hand in hand as far as ramping up. So we just have to keep up, and hopefully, or maybe most people, I think, will try to not go for Copilot yet. We just learned the other day, right, at Microsoft Inspire, that the cost for M365 Copilot is so high, like $30 per year. That's too much.
Yeah, that's not cheap. That's definitely not cheap.
Yep.
That's pretty expensive. Yeah. Do you think your office? Do you think your company will?
I think I'm losing your voice. Are you still able to hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's been I think my internet's a little bit dodgy. Do you think your company will make use of the M365 Copilot?
No, not yet.
No, too expensive.
Too much, yes.
Yeah. Have you tried it at all? Have you tried it at all?
Not really. I mean, I started to explore some of the other Copilots. I was really fascinated by the GitHub Copilot and those kind of things. So I was just trying to see what those are, kind of explore, but not really a lot into, you know, leveraging those technologies yet, at least as part of my job goes. So I'm really not into it at this point, but that's definitely something what is interesting. And I feel that's kind of the future. So at some point, you have to go learn it. So.
What would you say to people who think that certifications are just a waste of time? I don't think that, but some people think they're just like a badge that you should have or you don't need to have. What would you say to them? Why do you think certifications are important?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I cannot stress enough, even for like why someone should do certifications, because like I mentioned earlier, when you're on a job and you're trying to explore and learn just to, you know, do your best at your job, you already learn, you know, along the way, and you gain the knowledge. And the only gap or the only thing holding you back from having that shiny badge or the nice certificate to hang on the wall, I don't have any yet, but the only gap there is sitting for the test. So why not do it, right? So that's been my driving. And I mean, apart from that, I'd want to keep learning and expanding my knowledge spectrum anyway. So I would want to keep exploring.
Yeah.
And certifications, I think, is a great way to do that, because they give you a direction. So they help you keep up with ever-evolving technology. And the reason I say that is because once you're done with the certification exam, you're really not done unless it's a fundamentals, because it has a renewal test, right, every year. So during the renewal test, you get to learn what's the latest, because you have to sit for the test, you have to study, sit for the test, and renew your certificate to keep it live. So I think the certifications help you keep up with technology, which is definitely ever evolving. And I mean, for me as a hiring manager, you know, when I'm evaluating candidates, I do look for what certifications the candidates has earned, because it makes them stand out from the entire candidate pool. And I would think such candidates are more likely to provide added value on the job. And those are kind of my top reasons, or advantageous, I would say, as far as why get certified. But other than that, like we all know, the most common things where it can help boost your career, they give you increased confidence, you can do better as an individual contributor in your tech role, or start a new career in tech if you're a student. That helps you, and like I said, keep up to date with technology. So I think those are the reasons, I would say, are advantageous, and everyone should take advantage of getting certified and learn, basically, because it forces you to learn.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great answer. I love the fact that you went into like numerous levels of why you should do it, because I think you should do them as well. Yeah, definitely. Oh, we've got a question here. Let me show up this question. I'll let you answer this one as well.
That's a good question. For IoT, I think it's because if you are managing endpoints, you may or may not manage IoT directly, because there are several different Internet of Things out there. As far as an enterprise goes, the only best you can do is ensure that they have the latest and greatest hardware updates, because I think that helps as far as IoT goes. But otherwise, as far as endpoints go, we all know, we have to keep up with all the software updates as they come in. You have to keep upgrading your OS, so I think it's like keeping up with whatever is latest as far as patching goes, for be it regular endpoints or IoT, any kind of devices in the environment.
Yeah, no, it's a good question and good answer. Usually just put Defender 4 and then IoT Defender 4.
Right.
Yeah, install Defender 4, whatever. Just turn that on and make sure you're using it. Yeah, there's still customers I see who don't turn these things on, and they're like, oh, so I'll do a review of their environment, and they're like, I'll say to them, what's your secure score? And they're like, what? And I'm like, you don't know. And you look at Azure Advisor, and there's no score for security, and I'm like, you're not even got a score because you don't have this turned on. And then they
Yeah.
turn it on and they're like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. And it's also
Yeah.
so difficult to get to the score. Once you are at a certain limit, to get from there to the highest possible, that's where the most criticality lies, right? Because you can get to like maybe 60% pretty quickly, but then the latter part is where you have to really reach to your devices, maybe individually, to try and secure your vulnerabilities and get that score. But again, I think it's just a competition out there to get the right score.
Yeah, I mean, even coming back to the exams, I think the exams are a good point to. If you didn't do the exams, your knowledge gets to a certain point. But if you want to
Yeah.
push yourself and do the exams, you'll get that extra 10-15% of knowledge because you need to know potentially everything that might be covered. So it's the same
Exactly.
sort of thing. Yeah. So here's one. Here's another question from the same person. What would you call has been your greatest challenge in securing the infrastructure? Great question.
I would say getting a hand on some of the devices which are sometimes not reachable or not available, because basically for me, being in healthcare, I cannot just go randomly touch devices and reboot them, for instance, because that device may be used for a surgery right now. So I definitely don't want to touch it. So I think gaining control over the devices, over some of the devices, is difficult. And then secondly, it is always challenging, and I think it will always remain challenging to reach 100% or even a 99% of a secure environment, because that's ideally not possible. So that's kind of a challenge, I would say.
Yeah, it must be difficult in healthcare to try and do things like that. Yeah, I never really thought about that kind of industry. And great questions. Yeah, loving the questions. So yeah, that must
Yeah.
be tricky. That must be tricky.
Um,
Yeah. So you've done 12 exams. Is that you done? Have you stopped, or is there any coming up you're studying for, or are you done for the meantime?
So yeah, I mean, I was thinking I'll stop at the 12, but because new things come in, We have the Windows 365, which I'm not sure if they have an exam yet. I don't think so, but that exam will sometime come out. We already have the Azure Virtual Desktop exam, so I'm kind of thinking about that. But again, it's not directly what I work on, so I may delay it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to slow down, but I don't think I will stop.
No, good. What's your theory? What's your feelings about the renewals? How do you think the renewals? Do you like the renewals? Do you think they're good?
Yeah, definitely. They are good. They are seamless. They are simple. They're easy. It's not a daunting task at all, like how you would think. I mean, initially when I was like, oh, do I really need to now keep up with renewals every year? And I would have several to renew in a year. But then the first few renewals that I did, those were really pretty fast, as long as because I'm already working on the technology. So I do have an idea of where things are going as far as, newer developments go in the products. And along with that, I'm reading as well, I'm trying to expand my knowledge. So as long as you read and you keep up, the renewals are easy. And I think I mentioned earlier, the fundamentals do not have renewals. It's only the associate level or the specialty certificates or the expert level. But Microsoft has been, very good at even keeping documentation up to date for renewals exams or renewal tracks. So I did follow Microsoft Learn documentations for renewals, and that's how I was able to renew pretty quickly and easily. And the tests are so quick. You don't have to sit there for like 2 hours, and it is
Yeah,
not.
they've done a good job. I don't think
Yeah.
if the renewals were like the exam, and I don't think I'd be renewing all of mine, to be honest with you. But I'm glad they're the way they are. Right, I'm going to say hello to a few people, and then we'll jump to the questions again.
Okay.
So, hi Satish, hi Patrick Monk, hi Aditya, hi Nick. Hello to Satish, who has got a great question. Hi Luke, all the way from New Zealand. I'll let you answer this one as well. Oops, just pressed the wrong button there. Sorry.
Okay, Satish has a question. Healthcare systems are always changing and constantly upgrading. What's my take on no-touch infra scaling? Boon or bane? I would say it could go either way. It depends on your environment for the most part. Being in healthcare, I'll give you an example of Autopatch, which is automated patching of systems, which is quite in trend currently in the Microsoft world. But if we were to go that route, we would lose control over patching the systems. And so I think I would not want to lose 100% of control. I would still want to keep some control, because there, like I said earlier, there are certain systems I do not want to touch, or I want to touch in a certain period of time only. So I would say it's both. It's a boon or a bane, the way you would like to take it, depending on your infrastructure, depending on your environment, depending on your security requirements as well. But I feel it could be a boon for the most part if we were given some control by Microsoft for whatever platforms they come out with as far as security goes.
Yeah, good question. One more from Patrick Monk again. I'll let you answer this one again. You're doing great. Oh, done it again. I pressed the wrong button.
Patching endpoint secures them. Yeah, I do agree patching endpoint secures them. But I don't know what a security operations or a security engineer would say about that, although I'm not more from the security side. But from my standpoint, all I can do, as an endpoint administrator or as a desktop engineer, is to ensure that the latest patches are on the systems. So I definitely agree. For the most part, patching helps. But then if there are other controls that can be put in, then, from a security perspective, then they are more supplementary and obviously helpful. So, and like we say, security is not just doing one thing and be done. It's like doing layers or, different things at the same time to secure one particular area. So I think it's a mix. If you try to secure your stuff from all the sides, all perspectives, then it's even better.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Luke also says he used to work in healthcare and did server and desktop patching. It can get tricky, i.e., making sure you don't patch all of the emergency department at once. Yeah,
We do.
these are the things that. Yeah, I can imagine that must be difficult.
It is.
So, Sucheta, how do you decide when to patch and when not to patch? How do you go? How do you go about figuring out what you need to do and delay and when you can do stuff? How easy is that? I think that must be quite difficult.
Yeah. And before I answer that, I definitely want to say thanks to Luke for that insight. And obviously, we have to take care of that as part of healthcare IT. It's very, very important. So, as far as patching in a healthcare environment goes, it's you have to be cautious because it's very sensitive. You would first test on your IT people, your corporate level employees, and see how their machines fare for like maybe a week or two, and then go for the more clinical areas. Even as far as clinical areas go, you really want to patch whatever is the least sensitive out there. And there still may be machines or departments that do not want to be patched because of because their machines are maybe vendor controlled, or their machines are not available for patching, or they still want to stick on whatever lower OS build versions or patch levels to support certain software or infrastructure, or whatever they need from the vendor side. I would say there's really no choice, not much choice in that perspective. But again, it depends on what your security team wants you to do. So if your security team wants you to upgrade those machines, go patch them, you have to do it because they have a better understanding of what's out there as far as security and vulnerabilities go. So I think their inputs are definitely important, and they are necessary for someone in endpoint to be able to do their job.
Yeah, I guess your production's a little bit more. What's the word I'm going to? A lot more critical than most productions. You can't get it wrong. You've got to make sure that everything's super tested and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that must be really difficult. When you've done the exams, what did you get out of doing the fundamentals exams? Do you think it's worth people who have got skills still going back and doing the fundamentals exams? Did you learn anything doing that?
I did. You always learn a thing or two, and I think it's not a waste of time. Even if I were Azure Solutions Architect Expert certified, I would still go touch those different fundamentals exams because they give you more in-depth ideas about the core concepts. So like, for instance, I was talking about the Azure Data Fundamentals test earlier, which is the DP900. I know, Greg, you have a course on LinkedIn for that, right? I had referred to that when I was studying for my DP900. So if we take an example of that, it gives you a good understanding of core data concepts, analytics workloads, visualizing data, Power BI. So it gives you a little bit of a lateral understanding of that area. The other day I was thinking to myself, and this is in context of what you say, Gregor, about your T-shaped developer role. It's like you have the lateral understanding of most of the basics, but then you go deep into one. So that forms the T. So I think it applies here as well. Right? It applies here because you go laterally in the fundamentals, and then you go down deep into one area.
Oh, that's a good point. I never really thought of that. Yeah. So when I was at JP Morgan, they tried to get this idea of T-shaped developers. Excuse me. So if you had 5 people in your team, you might have everyone at a kind of standard level doing the fundamentals exams, and I might do the developer exams. Somebody might do the networking exams, and so people would go deep in an area. So the 5 people in your team of 5 cover quite a lot of things. That's kind of, in my view, that's quite a good way to do it. What I would suggest from my career, I would say it's probably better to focus on and be an expert in one area than try and be a jack of all trades. I think you get better on in life if you're very good at one thing. It's not always the case, but I think overall, I would say that's probably. I don't know what people think about that, but I think it's probably good to specialize in one area.
Definitely, I agree with that. And apart from specializing in one area, it's equally important to have that lateral understanding of, all the other things. So that's that. I think that T-shaped structure or the syntax is really a great one.
Yeah, it was weird when I first thought about it, and then I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense. Right, one more question from Patrick Monk. I love these questions. Keep them coming, please.
Views on future of configuration manager. That's a nice question. Like everyone likes to ask that question. Yeah, I feel configuration manager will still be around for some time, or maybe for a long time, because we do see Microsoft making developments to configuration manager. It hasn't stopped or it hasn't slowed down. So it definitely has a future. And I also feel for certain industry areas, maybe some government areas or healthcare, where they want to keep everything on-prem, they would never go to the cloud or to Intune or MECM for that matter. So they would always want to keep dealing with their endpoints centrally through Configuration Manager. So I think Configuration Manager still has a future. That's what my opinion is based on what's going on out there right now.
What's I haven't really done any Azure healthcare stuff. Is there I know there is stuff in Azure, but what is the healthcare stuff like in Azure? I've only read about it. I've never really touched it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? What's your kind of thoughts on? Do you use any of the Azure healthcare services?
We don't really. We treat it as just like any other Azure setup. So we haven't. There's a lot of things that Microsoft comes out with for the frontline workers. We try to take advantage of that, here and there, but I think most of that is still in preview. It's not GA, so it's difficult to even implement it in a production environment. However, for things like managing shared devices between frontline users, and by frontline users in healthcare, I mean our nurses and doctors, because they use they use iPads, iPhones, or any Android devices. It's really easy if there's a setup where they can switch the device from one user to the other. So as far as Intune goes, that we can set up configurations for shared devices, and I think that mostly fits into your question about healthcare for in Azure.
You before you come on, we were having a quick chat. You told me that you're in charge of 5 people on a team. How do you keep these people on your team skilled at a kind of cutting edge level? Because it's very difficult, as we all know, to try and keep up to date, especially in the cloud. Are there any what kind of methods do you use to kind of manage these people and try and keep them up to date?
I think for the most part, my team is very good at keeping up with technology. So they do like to go explore things, come back with solutions, and we try and brainstorm together, and we then put together a solution. At some points, there are instances where if I come across an article which someone like you has shared, or someone in the community, then I quickly share that with my team so that they are aware of it too. And I think that information sharing that goes on within our team members almost all of the time, and that's how we keep each other updated with the latest, and we really like to learn new things as well. It's I think the team is really good from that standpoint, where they like to learn. They're very trainable.
Brilliant. That's the main reason why I'm on Twitter and I follow like 10,000 people. I try and follow like as many people as I can, so when I see their posts, I can forward it on and other people can share that information. Because like Luke's
Yeah.
on, and I always forward on everything to do with Luke. Luke's newsletter on its own is brilliant. So good shout out to Luke for his newsletter. And if you're not signed up to Luke's newsletter, then you probably should. And hopefully he's going to ping me on Twitter the link, because I'll forget, and then we can share that. So exams. Let's round up exams quickly. What's your favourite exam, and what's your least favourite exam? What one did you like the best, and what one did you not like the most?
I don't have one best. I have maybe a couple different best ones. Obviously, the Azure Fundamentals, which was the very first exam that I studied for, it really gave me a good understanding of cloud concepts, because before that, it would have been difficult to find like a formal learning path or a learning documentation to understand cloud concepts in depth. But Azure Fundamentals just doesn't give you information about Azure and its services, but it also teaches you the concepts of the cloud itself. So I think that was my favorite when I did it maybe a few years ago. And then later, when I was doing some of the other fundamentals, I did like the Power Platform fundamentals because even if you're from any area of the industry, you can take advantage of the Power Platform because of you get to learn the basics of Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. Obviously, if you're not a developer, you may not look into the virtual agents a lot. But the Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, that helps anyone in IT, from any different, from any industry area. So I really liked studying for that exam, getting deeper insights into what can be done with less code or no code. So I think I liked that one. Dislike,
Very
I would
cool.
say the one that I disliked was that expert, the solutions architect expert,
Interesting.
because obviously that's, and by dislike I mean I disliked studying for that, I would say,
Yeah, because
because
it's so big.
it is it is comprehensive and it really tests your skills. And if you're not working or if you're not hands-on, doing things in Azure, it's very difficult for you to study for the exam, understand things, because this expert level exam has those lab type of scenarios, and you really have to have had experience to be able to answer those questions correctly. So I
Yeah.
think that's the one that I really struggled with a little bit. But yeah, I was able to get through it. So happy about that.
Yeah, congrats on doing that. Yeah, I think I would agree. I think the when I was studying for that exam, I was like, it's all of Azure, and it felt very daunting to think like I don't really do this part very often. But yeah, what you said was key there. I think you have to do hands on. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like the very first two exams I sat, I hadn't touched Azure really, and I was reading about. I think it was AZ 100 back then. That's how old it was, and AZ 101.
Uh-huh.
Instead of 104, it's up to 104 now, but before that it was 100 and 101, and I failed it because I was just reading about it and I had no idea of what I was doing half the time. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but you have to get like hands on and play with it and break it and bend it, and definitely. So if there's anyone watching or watching the replay, you have to get hands on with these exams,
Yes.
especially the ones that are kind of the expert. You're not going to pass them just by reading blog posts and tinkering a little bit. You have to get right in there and build stuff and make sure you understand it all and ask questions and go and figure that stuff out. So yeah, I mean
Yeah.
you've done. I'm looking at your exam list. You've done everything really. You've done AI, data, solutions expert, power platform, security. I don't think there's anything you've not done. It's very impressive.
I
Yeah,
was
good
I
power
was
to
too
you.
curious. I was too curious to dive into every area of the cloud platform. So I was like, even if I don't go deep into certain areas, I really want that high level knowledge. So that's why you see that long list.
Yeah, that was kind of my idea. Like I don't know networking. I don't really want to do networking. I'm not very good at it. But because I'm an Azure architect, you need to know it. So I have a developer background. So I'm not really an ops person at all. So I had really big problems with the networking. But I thought I'm going to try and do the exam and fill in the gaps, and that's what I did. So that's what I used it for. And I thought I'll do the exam just to see how far we got on, and I scraped a pass. But that's what it is. Yeah. So yeah, no, I think it's good to try and, especially if you've got interest in learning a little bit about everything. The only thing that I've not really done is Power Apps or Power Platform. I've not really touched that stuff.
Okay.
Um, but I do have Keith coming on. Keith Atherton's coming back on here to do some demos and that. So I'll be able to pick
Oh,
his
that would
brain
be
about
nice.
pick his brain about some of that stuff. So I noticed you're speaking at this year's Azure Back to School. You will tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, I noticed there's Azure Back to School coming up. So I'm definitely interested in that. So I was thinking, what topic should I choose for that? Of late, I've been working a little bit into Graph and trying to pull data from Intune and Azure as far as leveraging Graph goes. So I thought I would pretty much do a little bit of demo there. for how things can be done for starters, and kind of integrate that a little bit with PowerShell and how you can take advantage of the API to pull the kind of data that you would not otherwise readily find in the portals. So that's what I'm going to be doing at Back to School. It's going to be a little or a small demo of how you can get started with Graph and how you can take it further for your requirements.
What's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on playing a little bit with Microsoft Graph? So you've obviously done a little bit about it. Do you like it? Do you think it's easy? I thought it was a little bit. I don't know. I didn't really like it. If I'm being perfectly honest, what's your thoughts on it?
I'm just getting started with it, so I would not have maybe the perfect opinion about it. But I feel it's if you know how to use it correctly, or if you are able to leverage the platform properly, then you should be able to get the most of it. For your requirements to pull information and to do things with data. It's not just pulling information, but also it's like how you would make changes in a database with SQL. So you could make changes in your Intune environment or Azure environment using just the API. So I think it's a very good thing to have. And for someone who's really savvy, and people, I know there are so many geeks out there in the Microsoft community. So for those kind of people, it's really a great one, or a great tool, I think, to use, and maybe to gain more advantage out of what's already there.
Yeah, it's not to put any shade on it. It's just my understanding. I need to spend more time with it, I guess. I've just had a quick look at it, tried to do some querying of GitHub using the API, using Microsoft Graph, and it was like, this is actually quite tricky. So that was probably not a good start, but I'm interested to see. Hey, I'll definitely check your back to school session. So that would be good. When is that? Is that coming? I think that's coming up. Is that next one?
I think that's in September. But
September.
Yeah, I still have to set up my session and submit it. So it's going to be a while before I do that.
Are you doing a talk or a blog post, or what are you doing for that?
Yeah, it's going to be a short video.
All right, cool. And have you done videos before? Have you done lots of stuff like that, or this your first
Yeah,
time?
I did one for you guys, Festive Tech Calendar last year.
Yeah. Azure Fundamentals.
And when I came across that, I was so sad because I didn't know it all this time. Like the years before that, I never knew it existed. So last year in December, or maybe in November, when I came across it, I was like, I definitely have to take advantage of this, because this is a great platform. And that's where I really got to know you and Keith and Richard, and the three of you. You do a great job with that platform. And so this year as well, I'm definitely going to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But that was my first last year at the Festive Tech. Yeah,
that's awesome. There's a few people said that, so that's awesome to hear. Yes, but we'll definitely be doing that again this year.
Yeah.
We need to start planning that, actually, because I think we usually start August. So yeah, I've got a couple of weeks before we start planning it. Yeah, definitely doing that again. So if anyone wants to help out with that, just get in touch. Right, let's go back to your career. What's your greatest achievement in your career so far, do you think? What gives you the most pride in your career? Other than doing 12 exams.
Yeah, I think I'm really proud to be working in tech. And I'm so glad that I chose a career in tech right at the start of, getting out of college. Because at that time, years ago, I'm glad I never actually had a doubt of whether or not I would do good at tech. That was probably the norm back then, and it was kind of where everyone would go into tech, and I got into it, and that's what I feel most proud about. That I'm not just I didn't just start in tech, but I'm thriving there. And even today, I hold a great passion to learn and keep learning. So I think that's my greatest achievement. As far as
yeah, I've never spoken to you in my life, and I can tell that that's the kind of you're kind of passionate about learning. That will always steady you in good. That will always steady you in good stead in your career. You're very similar to me. I always like learning new stuff. Yeah. Brilliant. So awesome. So I always ask this question because there's a thing called a North Star, which is like what's the biggest thing in your career you could potentially achieve? What's your real end goal? If you could become like the Prime Minister or the biggest goal you can think of, what do you think your biggest goal might be?
I would
Have you
have
any
said,
idea what you?
I would have
Uh-huh.
said getting to the level of a chief technology officer, like a CTO, but I would not go that far. I think I need to, keep a good balance in between my work and life. So,
Yeah,
I,
your work-life balance would go downhill
yeah, so
if you
that's
did that.
like, it may get too much at that point. But yeah, I mean, I definitely want to, as far as my personal goals go, I want to be able to understand most of the areas of infrastructure and, be able to solve problems real quick and be on top of technology and definitely keep up with whatever is latest and greatest, and whatever highest I can go with with my career or even with tech, I would go there as long as I'm having a good work-life balance, I think.
Do you think you'll always stay in healthcare, or do you have visions of some other kind of area?
So this my current job is healthcare. The job previously was healthcare. The one before that was mostly healthcare and pharmacy. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm liking it, and because it has given me a good understanding of how things go in healthcare. I would want to stay in healthcare for the most part, but you never know how things would change. So, but I given a choice, I would want to stay in healthcare.
So you enjoy working in that industry and you want to stay there?
Yes, I am. I definitely am. And healthcare in the US is big. It's ever
Yeah.
booming and it's a need. So I think that will never slow down. There will always be challenges. You will always be challenged in your work role, in your job. So it's always going to be fun. You will never get bored. So I think it's a good place to be in.
Yeah, no, great. I just wanted to say thanks for all the questions and comments. What's the hardest part of your job? What's the bit that you don't like? Is it because you're in healthcare it's difficult, or is it what's the hardest part of your job?
I think more than more than me being in healthcare, it's more about keeping up with the ever-changing platforms. Microsoft is a great example, and because I work more on Microsoft technologies, I really have to make efforts to go and read every day. I think that's the hardest part, because if you don't keep up, you really cannot support your environments up to the mark. So you really have to be on your toes.
How do you do that though? Do you set time aside per week, or do you do it the weekends at night, or how do you make time for that? Because that's very challenging.
I know. I actually that was a question I was going to ask you, because you are mostly you are mostly
Oh,
the
it's ask me
person
stuff.
who can answer that. I think
Yes,
yeah, I think you definitely have to keep time aside to do that, because it's not just something you're doing for leisure. If you're reading something, you have to put your heart in to understand and retain it, because retaining it is other thing. So I do put time aside, if not every day, at least every alternate days, I try to do like reading for an hour or two. Sometimes on the weekends, if I'm like, sitting in the car, maybe. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's, leisure reading, sometimes it's really in-depth reading. That's what I do. How do you keep up with all these things that you do as part of your MVP
yeah,
role?
it's difficult. So, going back to the T-shaped developer, I kind of try and stay in my comfort zone, I guess. I don't really do AKS. I try and stay clear of networking, and I do everything else because I want to do everything else. Not that I don't want to do AKS or networking, but yeah, I'll stick to my kind of stuff that I like. Good question. Reading Twitter, reading all the blog posts that people skimming stuff as much as I can. All the Azure updates. Keep an eye on the Azure updates. John, what do you call him? John Saville on
Oh yeah.
YouTube. He's very good. Yeah, I spend a lot when I'm doing exams. Yeah, like the networking exams. I went through every single his videos like with a fine tooth comb. But it's difficult. Normally, what I do is when I'm writing infrastructure as code and I'm sitting waiting on it running, I'll sit and quickly open Twitter and scroll through and try and find people's. So
Oh
my
yeah.
Twitter feed is completely full of Azure people. Pretty much, it's 95% Azure people. So just reading
Right.
the blog posts, yeah, trying to share this stuff so that other people can learn, and asking lots of people at work, because, like in your team where you've got 5 different people who do 5 different skills, we've kind of got that at Intercept. So I speak to like Ma and Richard and Wesley and all these other people at work, and Simon and Astrid, like they'll know a bit about this part that I don't know. So I try and leverage their knowledge as well. But I've also learned from teaching. I was really
Right.
surprised that even teaching AZ900, like I'll give you an example. The marketing people and the sales people at Intercept are really keen on learning AZ900 Azure stuff, right? Just because they want to learn about, they work for a company that does Azure, they have an interest in it. But explaining networking to people who work in finance is really challenging. Like I had to try and explain peering and stuff like that, and I'm like, this makes me think. It makes me think about how I can explain this better for workshops because I just assume that people know what this is, but they don't. So even when I've been doing the AZ900, I've probably assumed like the level of knowledge is maybe here, but it's actually down here that I need to always cover. So yeah, I've learned a lot from teaching, which has been brilliant. Really a bit of an eye opener. Yeah, and I love when people ask questions. Like I like asking people questions because I get a different point of view. Your point of view on the exams that you like and how you study. And the fact you're doing healthcare is brilliant because I've never really spoke to anyone in healthcare. So this is fantastic. So learning
Yeah.
all the time is the key, I think, from all
Yes.
sorts of ways. Yeah, totally. I think I'm learning every day. If I wasn't in a job, If I wasn't in a job where I'm learning every day, I would probably find somewhere else. Yeah. So that's key for me. If I'm not learning, I get bored. I don't like doing the same thing day in, day out. So yeah, that's me. But you're not allowed to ask me any more questions because I get to ask you. So we're nearly finished. So a couple more questions. Where can people? Well, I've actually got. If you want to reach out to Sucheta, this is your Twitter, I believe. Did I get
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Cool. And on LinkedIn, you are that one there.
Yep.
Cool. So before you go, let me ask you a couple of questions about. Oh, I'm clicking all the wrong buttons now. I always like to ask people: do you have any holidays planned? Have you got any nice trips coming up?
I do have a short trip planned, which is to Texas within the US, but that's more to meet friends and family. However, I'm definitely looking forward to it because I'm going to be meeting my family. So yeah, that's going to be,
Nice. Good.
I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be my next best for now.
Do you have any tech conferences coming up? Do you get time to go to any tech conferences?
Not any conferences at this point. I'm like still gradually expanding into, collaborating with the community. But like I said, like we talked about, the Azure Back to School is like that platform. And then I also have something coming up with Jonah Anderson, which
Oh, nice.
yeah, which we are planning to do maybe a few months later, and that's a part of her Women in Tech
Oh,
initiative.
brilliant.
Yeah, she does that podcast, and she really wanted to do that recording with me, but that will be sometime later. So those are kind of the couple of things that are coming up for me.
Fantastic. Awesome. I think that's us, Sucheta. So thank you very much for coming on. This has been brilliant. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and
No,
hopefully we
same
can collaborate a bit more. Let's do some more talks or some sessions
here.
together because that'd be good. Okay,
Absolutely.
right. Any other? I don't think there's any other questions. Luke's saying Azure represent, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever had time to think about MVP at all? Have you not had too busy for that, or is it
Not
on the
yet,
radar?
not yet, but yeah, I mean, now that I am expanding collaboration with the community, I'm pretty sure I'll get into that at some point. I'll be like, oh,
Okay.
since I'm doing all of this, why not just go try further to
Yeah,
get that MVP award? So yeah, maybe potentially in
brilliant.
the future.
Yeah, good for you. Okay, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you're watching this in the replay, thanks for watching. Let me just play a little outro video, and thank you again for coming on. I've been thoroughly enjoyed.
Thanks,
It's been
everyone.
great to talk to you.
Bye.
Thank you.